Hi, everyone. So we will get started in just a moment. I'm just going to give it a little more time for people to join, and then we'll get started with our program. Welcome, everybody. Welcome, everyone. We will begin in just a few moments. Hi, everyone. We will get started in just one moment.
Hi, everyone. I hope you're able to see and hear me without any problems. I'm Dr. Larissa Werniak. I'm the program head for American Studies, and I'd like to welcome you to our iWeek presentation, which is affiliated with our American Studies Collaborative Solitude project. Just a couple of details before we get started. I wanted just to mention explicitly that the session is being recorded. I'm sure many of you are used to this by now, but I do think that it's important to say that audibly to make sure everybody is aware. And I also wanted to mention that we are certainly interested in your questions, your comments, your thoughts and contributions. So if you would like to either enter those into the chat box or just provide them after the presentation, we would certainly like to consider those as well. Just a couple words too on our project and our broader concepts here. We have called this the Collaborative Solitude Project and thought of it as sort of an extended dialogue, something that will be persisting through the summer and into the fall as we attempt to collect more students' reflections, thoughts, observations about their experiences over the last year and moving forward as well. We are really interested in kind of thinking about the ways that people are experiencing the pandemic, the challenges they are facing, the new ways that they are looking at the world, and so forth. And I think that in many ways, international students are exceptionally well suited or well qualified to make these kinds of observations. I was really struck in an article from the Chronicle of Higher Education that was exploring the international student experience. They too were thinking about the idea of international students as ambassadors. And the author wrote, when students come to America to study, they understand they will straddle two countries, two places, two worlds. The pandemic, though, has marooned them in just one. And I thought that that was really poignant, that of course there is always a challenge in being in two worlds, but when you are prepared to be a part of two worlds, when you develop connections and relationships and meaningful experiences in two worlds, that there's a loss in being stranded in just one as well. And I think in many ways, this project is an attempt to kind of reclaim multiple worlds. And we can construe that in many different ways, thinking about the two worlds of home and school, but also of thinking about sort of the world of feeling and the world of analysis, simultaneously being interested in our own emotions, even if they aren't logical, our feelings, even when we're feeling sorry for ourselves, really owning those perspectives, but then also taking the time to analyze them and to think about them on a broader scale, what they say culturally and socially, and even maybe on the broadest perspective, something about what it means to be human, we can explore through these experiences. So looking at the project from that perspective, and probably a grandiose perspective, the sense of being an opportunity to kind of put some things together or to create new seams, new togethernesses that might not have existed in the past. So again, we will continue to build this archive. And if you did not submit a piece of creative work or an image now and you would like to do so, we would be happy to accept that at any time. We think that, again, those international voices are particularly important. In the spirit of full participation and full fairness, I also created a submission here. I created an image demonstrating a certain aspect of my pandemic experience, and then a little comment to go with it, discussing my experience of living with my 3 cats during the pandemic. They've been my squad for the last year. And I was really struck. I'm a person who has lived alone for a great deal of time. I like living alone. I felt like I was pretty self-sufficient, but I have really realized the difference coming home to a house with cats in it versus a house that was totally empty day after day. And the fact that that really makes a difference in a way that I might have thought was very cheesy, very sentimental a year ago, that I do really acknowledge that what a difference that made, and that there are ways that I think that I have been happier and stabler because I have these guys around. Of course, they are also my foils. They interrupt my classes. They, at times have screaming fights while I am trying to teach. But in the story that I told, I have tried to see that as a way of trying to, demonstrate to the students that I recognize that we are in this weird endeavor together, and that there are challenges that we all face. Some days microphones don't work, and some days cell phones ring when they aren't meant to. And sometimes cats make your house sound like a murder den. And these are all things that we can just kind of laugh about and move on, that we don't have to see as serious problems or something that you will lose points for, but just kind of a part of life now, and instead something that we can kind of connect about. I think that in kind of the submissions that you guys have put forward, in addition to a more general collection of student reflections, international student reflections, that one of the themes I've really seen is kind of this desire to find opportunities for hope and gratitude, for appreciation, for recognizing that there are challenges, that certain things are particularly difficult right now, but really trying to maintain perspective about the things that we can take away from this, the things that we do have, and so forth. And I think that that's something that is evident both in the little collage that I made, and then also in the piece of art that Radhika submitted, which I believe is our next slide, where again, there is sort of this recognition of the joy that can be taken in the domestic, in kind of the small, in the local, in the familiar. And I think that for many people, this really has been something that they have taken away from the pandemic, that maybe there were ways that so many of us felt as though we needed to slow down and weren't able to, that we weren't spending enough time with our families, that we weren't spending enough time with our friends, enjoying our lives enough. And I think that this is really a beautiful reflection of kind of when we do have different schedules, different timetables, that even if we are with our families, that it might present challenges in terms of internet usage and being able to do work and go to school, that we can also sometimes see these new and different opportunities for connections and so forth. I think too, people who were apart from their families and friends have really been creative in finding new ways to try to maintain those connections. One student in a story I read talked about she was home in China, and she was trying to do dance classes with her friends from college. They had done ballet together, and she was trying to do this, and different people's cameras and connections would freeze up at different points in time. And so there would be these lags and people being out of sync. And she said that they decided to laugh about it and think of it as a new sort of postmodern dance project where everybody was disconnected, and that this was the new form of art, the new creative endeavor, which I thought was just like such an optimistic and creative and kind of humorous way of looking at something that could be seen just kind of as annoying or difficult. And I think that Harshit's piece, the written piece, really explores this beautifully as well. Harshit, did you want to read an excerpt from what you wrote?
Should I read up? Should I share my story?
Yeah, I would love that. Thank you. Whatever you feel comfortable with.
So if it's okay, I'll share my story. Hi everyone. The experience for me in the pandemic was, uh, I guess it was a blessing in disguise. Even though it was a pandemic, but for us, it was a little different experience. Actually, since 2012, roughly, my sister left the house to pursue her education in dental science, and our family hasn't been together ever since. Yearly once we used to meet for a family trip, but that's it. And this pandemic kind of brought us together as before the lockdown hit, our father had called us back to the house. And for the first time in almost 8 years, we were back together for a long period of time. So it kind of reconnected us and kind of refreshed our relationships with each other. We spent months together, and we played a lot of online games and offline games, and we connected. And post that, to make myself a little productive, I even created a startup. So I had not mentioned that in the page, so I thought of sharing it in the person. So I had created this art page called Art Okay Please, and in that I had a couple of artist friends, and they really wanted to showcase their art to the world and potentially even sell it to whoever was interested. So I came up with an initiative with them, and we came out to the world. We built an Instagram page, and we started publicizing everywhere. We hit some 300 plus followers, and we made some roughly 100 $200 worth sales. And it was a great experience. We spent some 6 months on it, and we were like literally working like a proper business, and putting down our hours and everything. So definitely it was a great experience. And of course, by the time the year was wrapping up, I had to take my visa and fly over here. So this and that, things kept happening, and I kept myself busy in the pandemic.
Thank you. That is such a great addition to that story. I had no idea, and I'm definitely interested in checking out the site. That is a very impressive pandemic project. I think that this is a great example of the ways that people have really come up. I think this is maybe the way to put it: come up with creative ways to be creative, new ways to share cultural work, to make connections, new ways of performing or being able to buy and sell things, or even influence in certain ways on some of the social media sites. And I've really been impressed by the ways that people have taken the constraints and the parameters provided that are totally new and different, and have not just kind of said, oh, my previous avenues have closed up, I will take a break, but instead have really looked for new ways to be productive. And I think that I really appreciate that, because personally, it's always felt like if you're able to find that a way to grow and develop and contribute in new ways, that is putting something out can be such a good way of avoiding depression, avoiding a sense of stagnation and so forth. So I think that absolutely has been another theme that has been evident. I think too that all of the different kinds of dislocation that people have experienced is really illustrated in the work that people have submitted, in the comments and reflections that people have made, looking at, first of all, the perspective of the last spring of how quickly international students had to decide whether they were going to stay or leave. And again, the upheaval that could be caused with either decision. Worrying on the one hand, if you left the country, first of all, the formal challenges, not many flights, affordability issues, the fact that your life was here, possibly with leases and jobs and things like that. And then from the other perspective, dealing with the challenges of trying to complete American education while being abroad. Some students have talked about, living in a time zone 7 or 8 or 10 hours away and yet having to be on Central Standard Time at all times, how exhausting that can be, and just how dislocating that can be, right? It's basically like working a night shift, but trying to do that educationally while also dealing with the challenges of online education, with the distance that is involved, the difficulties making connections, the fact that it can be harder, especially if you are learning in a second language, to really feel as though you are connecting with a professor. One of the things that I have really noticed, for example, and I've tried to be careful about this, is that when I teach in person, I can be fairly glib, I make jokes, I'm pretty loose, but I've realized that when I teach over Teams, that my students are a little bit less sure that I'm joking sometimes. I'm like, oh, am I supposed to laugh at that? Was that supposed to be a joke? And I realized that it's just because we're not face to face. I'm not giving them the same cues. They're not feeling my energy in the same way. And I think that when we have cultural differences in idiom and things like that on top of those built-in problems, that is, that's something that it's really important for faculty members to be aware of too. So those senses of community, or the lack thereof, I think have really been at the forefront of people's minds in terms of just the impossibility of truly replicating the college experience, the graduate school experience from afar, and trying to come up with kind of the best possible alternatives in terms of making do for the time being. I think something else that is really important that's come up in a number of these narratives is the ways that dualness of having a foot in multiple cultures leads to a unique perspective in terms of the ways that either country, either culture is approaching the pandemic, is approaching questions of public health, of community, of society, and so forth. I read a couple of really interesting stories from Asian students who, in the early days of the pandemic in the spring, started wearing masks proactively because, of course, in many Asian countries, that has long been an accepted behavior. That is something that is not outside the ordinary. And they basically said that they got so many questions, weird looks, even nasty comments, that they stopped doing that, even though we know in retrospect that that was a good practice. So they're really seeing that clash there between the knowledge that's gained in another culture and yet sort of an American closed-mindedness, in the sense that we know best and so forth. I think too that the pandemic has thrown into really sharp relief some of the ways that American life can be uniquely challenging. For example, the fact that so many of us live in single-family homes far from our extended families. That means that in a crisis, people are far away. We are cut off maybe from older relatives. We don't have those opportunities for childcare, for support, for extra backup, basically. And kind of realizing that in other cultures where that is not necessarily the norm, that there are completely different ways of strategizing the pandemic, kind of having more hands on deck if you're living in a house that does not just have 1 or 2 adults in it. That could actually be really useful. I actually read one article that was discussing young adults being interested in commune life, something that has not really come up in the United States since the 60s, kind of as an alternative to the very atomized, isolated norm here, which I thought was very interesting. Obviously, too, it is important to recognize, to acknowledge the racism and xenophobia that have been a part of this story. Obviously, this has been in the news quite a bit lately, but it certainly has been a problem that people have been reporting really since the beginning of the pandemic. I think it's quite clear that the opportunistic rhetoric of politicians seeking to blame the pandemic on China, to kind of spread that blame just to Asia in general, to avoid responsibility and so forth, that this has really had tangible harm on international students, on anybody, I think, who is seen or read or interpreted as being possibly quote unquote foreign or quote unquote not from here, and that it has certainly raised awareness of the extent to which these things are realities, that they are floating under the surface, and the difficulty of facing that both for Americans and international students. Americans recognizing that this still is a part of our culture, and of course, international students having to bear the burden of that, probably in more explicit ways than they have in the past, I think has been another theme of the last year. We also have a submission from Shresh, the video presentation. And Shresh, did you want to talk about that first, or would you like to play the video and then comment? Whatever works for you is fine with me.
Yeah, I'll speak first because I actually was supposed to do the video, but as soon as I took the vaccine, I got on the weather a bit, and then I couldn't shoot the video properly. So I told our Vice President Arsha to do it. So she has, I guess, perfectly summarized how we, evolved in the pandemic and how what all events or what all help we did to the community. Well, my personal experience with the COVID or my graduate studies was a matter of two halves. The first half, no COVID, and second half, all COVID. And in that all COVID phase, I was as a leader of the organization, was left with so many questions that what to do now, how to come up in this pandemic period, how to support this community, and being the largest student body, there were a lot of students who were suffering from, they wanted to go home, they wanted news about what's happening, they wanted food, they wanted lots of things. So then, we as a group started thinking about what difference can we make in this difficult times, and in this, then we started to come up with something. We started to talk with some NGOs around who are there, who are already been established from a long period of time. We got the funding, and with the help of that funding, what we did is, like, in the earlier part of the pandemic, when students were really scared of going outside their houses to even buy groceries. So, and in that time, we paired up with a lot of people. We got the funding, and then we ordered some groceries for students, and that groceries were enough for the students for like 2 months or so, for a single student. So we I guess achieved 8 to 900 students at that period of time, in the month of March, April, in the month of April, May, and June, and I guess that really assured students that somebody is there to help them. And we also got the feeling that, okay, we did something different, and nobody taught us to do this, but yeah, we came with something. That is why we are really proud of helping all the students in that period of time. So apart from that, even if you see the recent snowstorm which happened, in that also, although COVID was almost, like, I know it's not gone yet, but students here are all free, and they are now really not scared enough to move out. But the snowstorm really made them the scarier than the COVID. So in that also, we try to do something for the community, and then we again paired up with all the restaurants and here and there, and tried to explain them the situation, and they really accepted what was happening. and we're really happy that we actually provided food and then water to the students who were stranded, and there were apartments there in where I live in the west side. There was no electricity for 3 days. So no electricity meant no gas, nothing. So these are some of the things which we really would think back, saying that okay, we did something for the community apart from the airport pickups and temporary accommodations that we usually do. So and even this pandemic, we really did pickups for I guess 100 students, and along with the help of ICP, we distributed food packets to them, which was really a plus for students who came in. The food packets also consisted of hand sanitizer, masks, so that was a good head start for students who came in. So I think all this really summarizes our contribution during the pandemic.
Thank you so much. Could we play the video now?
Yeah.
It just takes 1 second to upload, just one moment.
I'm not able to hear it.
So if you could turn up your volume, yeah, I think it was running okay. So if you could turn up your volume a little bit, that would be awesome.
Okay.
And thank you so much for that submission. To kind of wrap things up, I think something that is really a thread that is woven through all of these submissions in the comments that international students have made elsewhere as well is really thinking about as we are contemplating a future, maybe a relatively near future, where things go back to a kind of normal, thinking consciously about what aspects of the last year might be worth keeping, might be worth hanging on to, might be revelations for us, and what we just want to throw away and never think about again. Maybe Microsoft Teams. But one of the things I've noticed, and I think the video really speaks to this, is what I would call the emergence of mutual aid organizations over the last year. The ways that people without any huge administrative hierarchy have looked at their own communities and seen, what do people need? How do we put things together? How can we use technology, which is often so annoying, to actually serve these needs in ways that we wouldn't have been able to 10 years ago even? And I think your example organizationally, that you figured things out on your own, as you've said, not because somebody told you to do things. And this pandemic really required us not just to adapt once, but to adapt over and over again. You talked about kind of the phases of the pandemic. First things were like this, and second they were like that. And I think you're exactly right. I was anxious in March about, was it okay for me to go running by myself outside? Was I going to contaminate somebody? Was I being a bad citizen? And kind of as the information on the ground has developed, as circumstances have changed, we've had to readapt and readapt. And I think that is really one of the strengths of this kind of activism, really, of organization, that it can be responsive to what people actually need, to listening to the voices in our communities. And I really commend you for doing that so effectively and so safely as well. Yeah. So I do hope that this is something that we can take away, this idea of autonomy, this idea of interconnectedness, right, of ourselves as a community and being able to respond to other people's needs. Because I think there were so many people, if they were not in dire circumstances, they wanted an opportunity to help somebody else, to be able to put in as well. I think that if we've kind of taken away a reminder of the ways that everybody is vulnerable, and everybody, there are needs that we all have that we can't kind of meet on our own, I think that would be a good outcome. And I really appreciate the opportunity to look over, to read and experience these submissions, these perspectives, and to be thinking about these things as well. Because I think as a UTD community that these are conversations and dialogues that we need to be having about what we've learned over the last year, what can be made better, how we can meet needs in new ways, and appreciate the resources that we have in terms of community dedication and so forth that you guys have really exemplified. So thank you again for your participation, your enthusiasm, and of course, these submissions. Anything you guys would like to say as a closing note?
Harshit, you have a question in the chat. The question is, or comment and question is, it's amazing that you're able to start a startup at this time. How is it going, or is it going well?
Hi, I just saw that message and I thought of replying, but yeah, I'll reply. So actually, since it was a second job kind of for every one of us, I was planning to come to US, and it was a brief silent period in my life in which I wanted to do something productive. Similarly, for my friends, they had their own career going on, but everyone was at a halt because of the pandemic. So it was a second job for us in a way. So they loved making art, and I gave them a platform to sell their art and showcase to the world how exactly how talented they are. So it was a kind of learning experience, but as the pandemic slowly became little easier and restrictions started becoming little loose, everyone started to get back to their real lives, and our group kind of split on 31st of December. So even though it just lasted roughly 3 to 4 months, but I can guarantee you the 3 to 4 months that we spent together, we were working like a serious business, putting down our hours and discussing for hours and creating quality content and making sure that our customers are heard and getting the best experience out of us. So definitely it was a great learning experience.
That's so interesting. I think you could make an argument that everybody's first startup should have a 4-month expiration date, that and then start over with what you've learned. I think you could spin that as a real positive. We'd probably have a lot of better companies if people did that more often. Other questions or comments?
Okay. I guess Leticia had something to say, so he can go first.
Thank you. I just want to take this moment to express our gratitude to Harshit and Siraj. I think both of you, in a different way, had a very important role related to our mission, which is helping and assisting international students. On the Harshit role, since we were offering everything virtually, everything online, having the presence of Harshit, I could say in most of our event, was a wonderful way for us as a feedback to know that there was a way to communicate with international students. I'm not saying he was the only one, but he was the most frequent one. And it meant a lot to us, Harshit. Now hearing that you, on top of studying, were handling your own business, I cannot imagine how you found time to dedicate for our programs, and we really appreciate it. On the ISA side, well, we work all through the year with specifically with the Indian Student Association, specifically with Siraj, and we want to express our gratitude, Siraj, because during the pandemic, having the partnership of the Indian Student Association was key for us to be able to accomplish what we have accomplished, which was trying to support specifically and very importantly, all new students. The projects that we coordinate together, such as orientation, virtual orientation for the first time, and also all the packets that you, with the help of Big Howdy, were able to deliver, all the mentorship that you provided to all international students. It has a lot of meaning. And you, I know you're graduating, Siraj, but you're leaving a huge legacy.
Yeah.
A huge legacy to UTD, to a lot of students that have benefited from your services, from you and from all the Indian Student Association officers. So thank you both.
Thank you,
Thank you so
Leticia.
much, Leticia.
I have a question for you, Shiraj. Seeing as how we had kind of a pandemic and then like an emergency storm in Texas, did you feel that the pandemic made you extra flexible or somewhat prepared you for that week of kind of utter snowstorm, where everything was at a standstill in Texas? How do you think the pandemic has prepared you, your organization, and your constituents for emergency situations like that?
Yeah. So I was really going to say about this because rightly said by you that it indeed helped us because we did not have to look back about something or ask somebody or go and look for templates about what to do in this our situation. We knew whom to contact. We knew how to form groups and spread the word out if there is any emergency, and how whom to reach out to for help regarding food or anything. So I guess the pandemic really helped us in that aspect. And as soon as the snowstorm hit, even though it was scarier because there was no electricity, there's no water at times, but we knew how we can procure these things and how we as a team can come together and deliver at particular location. Because in the during the pandemic, when we had the grocery distribution, we had formed groups about who will take care of which community, like which apartment complexes. And that, having that data already with us, what we just had to do is tell the team leads of that particular communities that, just spread the word around, that if somebody needs any help regarding food or if somebody needs accommodation, they can come over to wherever there is place. So it did not take much efforts on our end, because we knew what to do. And I guess that will go on if the similar type of situation comes ahead.
Excellent. Wonderful. Thank you so much for answering my question.
Yeah. And like the last notes which I'll have to share is, although we had to do with Microsoft Teams or Zoom meetings or sit at home, but what I feel is it actually increased productivity at some point, because everybody had to just switch on the laptops and join the meetings or give a quick call up about what's the status about the thing they are doing, instead of coming and meeting in college where they have some other responsibilities. They have to go around and they might not make it for the meetings in person. So that was some happy side of it, when I just have to just call up on Teams and ask me, you know what, I just want to talk to you for 5 minutes. So wherever he is, he can just call on the phone, on the laptop. So that was kind of a good thing the pandemic gave us. But yeah, overall, I did not expect that my experience will go all online, but I'm really proud that me and my team did something, that got to do something rather than did something, because the opportunity was there for us to do it. And I'm really glad that we did everything. And maybe years to come, I'm not wishing for another pandemic, but but even if there is some similar situation that might come up, but we know that the coming years, students will be as ready as we were.
Excellent. Thank you so much for that comment. And I have to agree that I think that to some degree, the pandemic has made us more flexible as human beings, but also has provided us with ways of connecting with each other without actually being in each other's presence, which, for its good and bad is, it's positive and negative, but I think overall in this situation, a very positive revelation, I think. Harsha, you want to go ahead?
Yeah, actually, I just wanted to give a vote of thanks to the ICP team and ISA team. So, being international student, I really want to just take this opportunity and thank first the ICP team, because the ideas, the feedback, the tips, the information that I could get from the ICP team was really something that you cannot find anywhere on internet, and it's very difficult to get all that information from your seniors as well, because it's those small minor basic things which is difficult to expect to know before actually coming here and doing those mistakes or figuring out ourselves. So huge shout out to the entire ICP team, and Katie, Tamara, and Flower, and Leticia. Thank you so much. I still remember it used to be 12 in the night, and I used to keep waiting when the session goes live and when can I attend and when can I participate. I used to really look forward to those events, and then for the ISA team as well. ISA truly helped me transition from India to USA. They were very helpful. I attended almost every session of yours. So from the housing recommendations to the food to the restaurants to the college life, everything. ISA team was there with me with the groups and letting us communicate, ask our doubts. Even I was one of those lucky people who got the airport pickup. So that was there, and of course the welcome package, and even during the snowstorm, ISA was there again. So I really want to take this opportunity and thank you, all of you, because I am the customer, and I have received all the love and support from all of you. So thank you so much.
And I think that is an excellent note to close on. I also want to thank Intercultural Programs for allowing American Studies to participate in iWeek and to collect these experiences. Again, we would love to get more. And thank you once again to our participants and contributors. I'm so grateful for being able to share in these experiences and listen to you guys talk as well about what the last year has been like for you. That is insight that I don't think I would have gotten in any other way. So really value this experience. And thank you to everybody for coming as well. I think we're about ready to wrap up. So I hope you guys have a good rest of the afternoon and that the rest of iWeek is an excellent celebration.
Yeah, bye-bye. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.